Hey everyone, welcome back to the Clint Pack Show. I'm your host, Pack. This is Clint. We're super excited for you guys to join us once again. We want to thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, comment, retweet, do all the different things. Go follow Ghost on Twitter. Go follow the Total Coverage Network on YouTube. And go follow them on Twitter. They do really good content. You'll get covered on pretty much every single area of the sport, whether it's the ACC, the Group of Five, the Big Ten, the Big 12. You get pretty much everything. So it's the place to be during the season. Today, Clint and I, we're going to be talking about some of the games from this past week. We're going to obviously break down Ole Miss, Georgia. We're going to be talking about Vandy LSU. We're going to be talking about Bama over Tennessee and a couple of the other games. And then we'll head into some of the games that you'll see this weekend. We're going to be talking, of course, OU, Ole Miss, as you can tell by the title. We're going to be checking out Vandy and Mizzou, where College Game Day is going. And then we're also going to take a peek at some of the other games that are big across the country. And then, as always, we'll talk about Texas. We'll break down what happened against Mississippi State. And then we'll break down what happened against Kentucky. And then we'll talk about Mississippi State, what to expect in that game, and what you need to see from Texas and what you want to see from Texas. So you got a super loaded show. We're glad to be here with you guys. And Clint, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Just getting ready to recap what happened and then preview what looks like an exciting week for us.
Yeah, for sure. So we can just jump right into it. Of course, we're going to talk about Texas, Mississippi State first. We'll save the best for last and all the good games that are fun to talk about towards a little bit later. So for Texas, Kentucky, I'm sorry. I keep saying Kentucky. I keep saying Texas, Mississippi State. I mean Texas, Kentucky. Not a great performance from Texas, right? A 16-13 win in overtime. Really, really ugly offensively. Could not run the ball again. Arch Manning, pretty much everything that you saw him continue to improve upon again from Florida to Oklahoma. All of that felt like it pretty much went entirely away. So, not something that you love to see there. And then on the other side, the defense played well, right? You did see them move the ball. You saw maybe um, a little bit more success from the Kentucky offense than maybe you would like to have seen. But those things are going to happen, right?
Um, I guess we lost Pack. Um, he said it crashed. Give him a second. I'll just give my recap of that game while he's fixing his issue. But yeah, from what I saw in the Kentucky Texas game, big glaring obvious issue was our inability to move the ball on offense. Um, when we were on offense, we were not being able to move the ball at all. We saw a little bit of good movement from the first drive up until we got stopped, and then we were able to get the ball in the end zone thanks to that Niblet return that got us situated within the 5 yard line. But other than that, we just had a huge inability to move the ball. If you look at what happened numbers wise, Arch Manning, 25 QBR with 12 of 27 completions and 132 yards in the air. Thankfully, no turnovers, which definitely helped us stay in the game, helped us win despite everything that should have caused us to lose. But you can't win a game like that against competent opponents. Thankfully, we're playing Kentucky. Thankfully, Kentucky hasn't really done much this year. They haven't shown that that they can really capitalize on many of these opportunities. But when you have a time of possession ratio of Texas having 20 and Kentucky having 40, that's gonna kill your game, and it's gonna kill the defense too, because the defense was playing lights out at least for the first half. They gave up 0 points for the entire first half, But once they're out there for that amount of time, you're giving them zero rest. It's going to end up coming back to bite you, and they're going to be drained physically. As you saw, Cutter Boley was 31 for 39, 258 yards. Thankfully, we were able to keep them out of the end zone. Besides that one drive where Cutter Boley got that one, I'd say about 20-yard touchdown run. But other than that, it's just you're draining your team physically. And thankfully for Niblett, he was able to get us in good field position for 2 of those drives that totaled in 10 points, and was able to get us in that range for Mason Shipley to get that field goal that would have won the game if Kentucky hadn't gotten that last field goal. But big takeaways: defense played good, special teams played really good. That goal line stand on 4th and goal was huge, very reminiscent of the Texas A&M game last year. And just Mason Shipley, all we've seen from him since coming to Texas is he's been amazing. He's been a great upgrade at the position. And also Jack Boymeister, I want to give some love to the punter who helped us a lot with the field position game. But other than that, just a very ugly game. Need to see some improvement and need Arch to not go back to what he did versus UTEP like we saw on Saturday.
Yeah, before I crashed, that's kind of what I was getting to, where I think you hit it really well. The defense, if you're on the field for that long, you're naturally going to give up some yards. The time of possession is a real issue when you can't sustain drives, and that starts with being really unsuccessful on 1st and 2nd down, and that's something that they're going to have to improve upon, especially against Mississippi State, who's going to, if you give them a lot of plays and a lot of possessions, eventually you're going to get tired, and eventually they're going to put some points on you just because of the way that offense works. So it's something that you've got to improve upon heading into next week. It's something that you're obviously not super happy with in terms of what happened against Kentucky. And then we haven't talked about it a ton yet, but Arch Manning's regression after you saw a real step forward is a real concern. And it kind of suggests that on the road he's not comfortable, and you can't really have that in the SEC, especially not when in 3 weeks you're going to go play, or in about a month you're going to go play Georgia on the road in Athens and what's likely to be a night game. You can't have Manning struggle that way. You can't miss explosives. You can't miss easy reads. So all concerns for Texas, all things that you do need to see improvement on, and all things that kind of change the perception of what you think about this team going forward. And that may be the most damning or most scary thing for Texas is how it looked like you had some real momentum and some real hope there after OU and the Red River, and then you come out a week later and it feels kind of like it did after the Florida game, where you think you may be going 8-4, 7-5, 9-3 best case, and that's not up to standard for Texas, especially with what hype came in during the preseason.
Yeah, man, you pretty much just hammered everything perfectly. And then I guess just the last point I want to make is just also our inability to run. Obviously, that's very cognizant of our O-line issues that we've seen, which is probably the most damning thing on our offense is that's causing us to not be able to do anything. Which, yeah, Arch Manning had some pretty bad throws. We're not gonna discount that at all. But to be pressured on, I think I saw a stat during the game. It was like 45% of his dropbacks all year. That's horrible. I mean, there's no other way to say it. There's no way to sugarcoat it to be nice at all. It's horrible. It's probably one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen at Texas, maybe the worst offensive line I see at Texas. And you can't get you can't get a rhythm moving whenever you're allowing your quarterback to get hit like 1 to 2 seconds after the ball snapped, and also having costly penalties like holding just constantly during the game that just kills your drives. We weren't able to run the ball, obviously, like I just said. I think we had 50 or less yards rushing. I could be wrong, but it was just a horrendous day offensively and just not something that really makes you super optimistic for the future.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I think that's kind of all you really have to say about this Texas Kentucky game. There's not a whole lot of conversation that needs to be had. It's a disappointing performance. There's not a whole lot of positive you can take away from it, and really, the only takeaway is you still don't have a run game. The pass game is still really inconsistent, and if you don't see major improvement heading forward, it will be an 8-4, 7-5 season, and you probably will need to make some changes during the off season. So I think we can kind of leave the game there, and then we can go into some of the more
I just want to
Yeah.
hit this. Which O lineman didn't play last week? It was Cole Hudson. So Cole Hudson
This,
didn't play at center, so we had to bring in Connor Robertson to fill his shoes. Still saw Nick Brooks like we saw against Oklahoma retain starting position at left guard, but I think that definitely played a little bit of a role in the dropbacks being bad. But it's just been bad all year.
yeah, I think that's said well. So we can move on to some of the more fun games to talk about. We'll start with obviously Bama and Tennessee, just because that was the last game that was on during the day. Bama with an impressive win, 37-20. I think the defense was impressive, right? You got 9 points from them from the safety, and then the pick six on the last play of the second half. And then the offense did what they needed to do, right? 28 points without the turnovers. They did a good job in terms of moving the ball, sustaining possessions on third down, creating first downs in what are less than opportune situations. So it's kind of what you come to expect of Ty Simpson in this Alabama offense. It, for my money, is probably the best offense in the country. And then Bama's one of the two best teams in the country, maybe three if you want to put Indiana up there with them in Ohio State. So it's kind of one of those performances that reinforces what you think about Alabama if you are high on them. If you're not high on them, you can probably point to the fact that Tennessee outgained them, or that outside of the score, it may not have felt as lopsided as the score may suggest. Tennessee was able to move the ball some, and towards the later stages of the game, they got some stops. But to me, I thought Alabama was kind of in control of the game, and it's another really impressive win for them. Another top. I think this is now their fourth straight week of a top 20 win. So you got to give them a lot of props there, because that's not a joke of a schedule at all.
Yeah, and also just want to confirm your stat. Yeah, it is the fourth straight week of a top 20 win. Also, thanks for watching, Kuyan. And then thank you, Link, for tuning in. But yeah, so you pretty much hit the nail on the head with everything. Bama they're just continuing to show how much they've improved every week, and they're just showing that they're one of the most complete teams in the nation, I would say. Offense looked very good. Ty Simpson is continuing to contribute to his Heisman campaign, 19 of 29 for 253, 2 touchdowns, which stats aren't everything. But I mean, if you just watch the film, he played really damn good. I think the big turning point in that game, obviously, with a 14-point swing, was that pick six on the goal line right before halftime. It's the game overall. Other than that, I didn't get to watch too much, to be honest, because I was watching the Texas game at the same time. But from what I saw and just watching back the film that I could, it just Tennessee didn't play bad. Obviously, Joey Aguilar still had a pretty good day. It wasn't a true domination, like I would say, but I think Alabama definitely was the better team that day. They definitely were the more physical team. They were just better all around that day, and it's a great win for Alabama. And just, yeah, they just continue to build on ever since that Florida State game.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's just them continuing to build on what they've shown week to week, and that's probably a really good sign for them. I think you're seeing this with Ohio State too, and even Indiana, where they're just getting better and better and better as the weeks go. And that's, to me, that's probably the class of college football right now, where those are your them, and then you can add maybe one or two teams in there, but that's kind of your national title favorites right now, and then it's everyone else after that. So heading into another team that may be a national title contender is Georgia. We saw them play at Sanford Stadium against Ole Miss. Really, really competitive game, really fun game to watch. Ole Miss was up by 9 in the fourth quarter. Georgia gets 3 stops in a row. They end up winning by 8. I think the final score was 43-35. The game had 11 straight possessions without a stop from either defense, and then in the end, Ole Miss's defense did not get a single stop against Gunnar Stockton, Zachariah Branch, Nate Fraser, and that Georgia offense. Clint, did you have any takeaways watching that game, and anything that kind of impressed you about Georgia? Anything that this game told you about either team or changed your opinion on?
Yeah, so I think it did change my opinion with one thing during the game. It definitely made me a little bit less scared of that Georgia defense. granted, we don't have a great offense, but even more as to why it made me a little bit more hopeful for that game, which we'll cover that game whenever the week is there. But I was very shocked with how much Georgia was giving up on defense. It seemed like Ole Miss, until those last two drives, was just moving it at will. They just didn't have much of a problem at all. Trinidad Chambliss, for most of that game, was playing very good, as he has played for the majority of the season. The run game, Georgia was able to limit, so I'll give them their props there. And yeah, Ole Miss on defense also can't stop a feather. I mean, they were just they didn't get a single drive where they got to stop. I think they scored a touchdown on every drive, if I'm correct, Georgia.
Touchdown or a field goal.
Touchdown or field goal. Yeah, so you can't win games when you're giving up 40 plus points a game, and it just shows that Ole Miss is still not a complete team. It still shows that Lane Kiffin still has struggles on the road as a head coach. It definitely makes me respect Georgia's offense more, though, even though Ole Miss's defense didn't play great. But the biggest takeaway was definitely Georgia's lack of ability to stop the ball, and it just continues to it continues to contribute to the narrative that they can't play a complete game in the first half. They just still continue to struggle and continue to really have an inability to gain any traction in that first half of when they play games. So,
yeah, I think you said it well. To me, it kind of symbolizes kind of the issue that I have with Ole Miss, and I think this game kind of showed you everything that's their problem. One, I just defensively, their linebackers do a really, really poor job fitting the run. We talked about this after week one. You and I, I remember I texted you this. I don't think their backers do a very good job fitting the run. I don't think they see the right things. I think they end up in the wrong gap way too often. And what that ends up causing is it ends up causing Golding to have to run more stunts, because when your linebackers can't play as a stack fitter, or they can't play a little bit slower, or they're not seeing the right things, you need to make them play faster and you need to make their life easier. And what that means is you start gap shooting with your backers. You start playing super downhill, where if you're going to normally play either A or C gap, depending on where the ball goes, well, now we're going to slant our front and you're only going to play C gap now, or you're only going to play A gap so you can play downhill and you can play a bit faster. But when you do that, you make it a lot easier to create cutback lanes. There's no one on the second level to stop anything that is to stop any running back who gets through a gap. So you end up getting gashed a lot more. And you saw that against Georgia. That's a good offensive line. And that's kind of the fear for Ole Miss is against these good offensive lines, they are going to get gashed. They are going to be punished because their linebackers are a bit of a liability. And then even the secondary, I thought in general they played good coverage. It wasn't like they were getting beat on it. It wasn't like they were getting egregiously beat, but missing the ball at the catch point, not being able to get your head around, not being in good spots in terms of where your eyes are, all things that you can't do against a good wide receiver room, and Georgia has one of those. So kind of showing you the issues everywhere for Ole Miss defensively. I thought the offense for Ole Miss was super impressive, but again, eventually Georgia was going to get stops. You knew that. They've got too good of a defensive staff. They're too smart. They can eventually figure out ways to create pressure and ways to get stops, and they did. And Pete Golding couldn't, because that roster, especially defensively, is a real liability. So to sum it all up, I think that to me this doesn't change a whole lot about what I think about Georgia. I think the defense is going to have to improve a lot. I think the offense is good. I'm not sure that I was super, super impressed by this game against Ole Miss, just because we knew coming in that Ole Miss was not very good defensively. We knew their linebackers really struggled to fit the run. And when you can't fit the run against Georgia, everything else opens up for them. So I thought Stockton played well. I thought he did a really good job of being accurate. He showed some real progress in terms of being able to throw against zone coverage and being able to see the right things. But again, this is a defense that hasn't been great all year, so you're not sure totally what to take away. I think you'll learn a little bit more next week when they play a really, really good defense in Florida, and that'll be more of a test for them than this past weekend was. But It reinforced to me that Ole Miss is not a title contender. I think they'll be a fringe playoff contender, and then Georgia is a playoff contender. And we'll kind of see what happens with the defense, and that'll determine whether or not they're a national title contender or just a playoff contender.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just want to thank Alex Boxwarrior for tuning in, Brian Sanders for tuning in, and thank you, Gig on Bart. Georgia for once looks mortal, though. I agree. I think we saw a little bit of this last year when they played Ole Miss and when they played Bama. But yeah, I think this is the first year that they really look. They've looked really beatable, most beatable at least under Kirby Smart from what we've seen for a while.
Yeah, I think that's right. They're super young defensively. I think outside of Dalen Everett, their secondary is all underclassmen. That's usually a sign of a team that's going to have a lot of busts and who's going to not execute always at the highest level. They're pretty young in terms of their pass rushers, too. I think Quintavious Johnson, Gabe Harris, Chris Cole, I think they're all also underclassmen. So you're seeing a really young team that's making mistakes, that's missing opportunities. Against Ole Miss, you saw them miss a lot of tackles. I think even the second play of the game, or maybe it was on the second drive, where Trinidad Chambliss is 20 yards into the backfield and he throws it to Daquan Wright about 8 yards deep in the backfield, and Jonel Aguero misses a tackle and ends up going for a first down. Those are the types of things that you don't normally expect from Georgia's defense, and you're seeing it a lot this year. It's a real problem for them. So I think Gig'em Bart's right. That's a real That's a real like sign of the mortality of this defense. Is they're not executing the way a typical Georgia defense would.
Yeah, I mean that's perfectly said. If you have nothing else to say, I think we can move into
Yep.
some previews for next week. We can start with what Posse wants to know. Who y'all got? LSU or Aggie? I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting game. One, because a lot of it to me depends on if LSU gets some of their defensive linemen back and if they get Whit Weeks back. If they can get Weeks back and they can get some of those defensive linemen, I think they'll. I don't think you'll see a performance that was very similar to the Vanderbilt game, where Vanderbilt to me that felt like a microcosm of not being healthy on the defensive line, having to play Harold Perkins as much as they did, and then eventually, when you can't stop the run and you've got Harold Perkins who plays super downhill and isn't really someone who's going to play super cerebrally, you can create issues with the QB run game. You can create a lot of issues with triple option and some of the more creative run game things that Vanderbilt was doing. Now A&M can do some of that, but if you get Whit Weeks back, I think that is a totally different game in terms of what you're going to see in terms of what LSU can do and in terms of how they're going to be able to stop the run, because Weeks is a tremendous run defender. He understands his gaps really well. He's a good tackler. He's not going to get out leveraged. He understands where he needs to be. So from that standpoint, I think you feel a little bit better in terms of the run game against A&M, especially without Le'Veon Moss. But then in the pass game, are you going to be able to guard Casey Concepcion in the slot? What are you going to do against 3-by-1 when they walk Harold Perkins out and they make him play coverage, right? That's a real problem. I think that you saw Ole Miss exploit this a lot in their win. I would expect A&M to do the same. I think they'll have to force Blake Baker's hand into either bringing Harold Perkins out or playing a bunch of zone. And then it becomes whether or not Colin Klein can find solutions to the zone and whether or not Marcel Reed can hit the right routes. On the other side of the ball, I think if LSU's not healthy on the offensive line, I think they're going to struggle once again. I don't think that this A&M defensive line is great. I think it's good. I think that a lot of the disruption they create is just because of Mike Elko being as exotic as he is, being as smart as he is. You see them stunt the front up a lot, where they'll run a torch stunt, where they're going to exchange the nose and the tackle. They'll run a pop stunt or a jam stunt, which is just a tackle end stunt or an end tackle stunt, where they're spiking one of them, wrapping the other. You create a lot of disruption with those types of stunts, and you see that a lot from A&M. Their backers can get washed a lot. You can see them stacking the wrong gaps quite a bit, which isn't something you expect. And it's really not something that you'd expect to see given the hype that Torian York does have, where Torian York's considered a top three linebacker in the country by some. And then you watch his tape and he's missing gaps and he's missing tackles and he's in the wrong spots. And it makes you wonder what everyone else is watching or what they're seeing. So that to me, if LSU had an offensive line and they could run the ball, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with them because they can't, and because I think if you allow Mike Elko and you allow those pass rushers to really be able to attack that offensive line and be able to pin their ears back, I think you're going to have a lot of trouble at home. I think this is one of those games where it feels like A&M is the team who should win. A&M's the team that you feel more confident in heading in. But just because it's in Death Valley, I do think you're going to see a pissed off LSU team. I think you're going to see an LSU team that's fighting for their season. And so for those reasons, I will take LSU, but I think it'll be a close game. I'll take them something like 27-24.
Yeah, man. Very good analysis for just every aspect of this game. I think we saw last week because A&M's been, other than that one Notre Dame game, they've been at home every single game, which just historically and throughout, ever since Jimbo was there, which I get it's a different regime with Elko, but it's just kind of ranged true to they're just a home, I wouldn't want to say home merchant, but they're definitely a way different team when they're at home than on the road. Because the two games that we've seen them on the road at Notre Dame and at Arkansas, they've given up 40-plus points, which I get that Arkansas has a very good offense and that Notre Dame is not any super easy team. It definitely concerns me a lot when they're going to a much more hostile environment, possibly the most hostile, depending on who you ask. They're playing a much better overall team than Arkansas is, and it's just going to be a much tougher game for them all around because you have Arkansas, who they may have the worst defense in the SEC.
Probably.
Yeah. So they're not going to be having that luxury of being able to probably rack up 40 points. I doubt that we're going to see that. I don't know. Maybe we do, but I think that chance is very slim. And you're also playing a much better defense than LSU, who all around they've been pretty damn good all year. They give it up. I think this Vandy game was the first time they've given up over 30 points, if I'm right. Yeah. So it's going to be a very tough game for A&M. I think they're better. I think A&M is better though all around. I think that the dynamic that they have on offense with one, the offensive line is very good. I think two, Marcel Reed. I don't think he's still that great of a passer. I do think that he has improved though. Every game, just having Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, that 1-2 duo at the wide receiver core, that's something that's hard to stop for any team, and it's going to be hard to stop for any team. But with Le'Veon Moss out, it's definitely going to be harder for them to get the run game going. Ruben Owens isn't bad, but he's definitely not the game changer that Le'Veon Moss can be. But also what I worry about with LSU is that inability to move the ball offensively. We saw them do it better against Vanderbilt, but they still have no run game. They still have no identity in that area. I don't know how healthy their O-line is going to be come game day. I want to say this is probably the most 50-50 I am for the weekend, but I think just from what I've seen this year, and it's going to be one of those situations where I'm going to believe this until I'm proven otherwise. I think A&M will probably come out on top. They'll get their first win in Death Valley since 1994-95. So I'm going to take the Aggies on this one. I'm going to go like a 28-27 game. I think it'll be very close, but I just think A&M is going to come out on top, and I think they're just overall the better team.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair at all. I think you said everything really, really well. So we can move on to our next game, which is going to be Oklahoma and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is looking to bounce back after a really heartbreaking loss against Georgia, and then Oklahoma pretty much drubbed a really bad South Carolina team. And coming off 2 weeks ago, a Red River loss where the offense was put in a complete box. So I think just to start, this game is going to be at 11 a.m. Central Time. It's a morning game, so for Ole Miss, they're not going to have to deal with a night game, having to deal with the most raucous crowd that they would need to here. To me, that's a pretty big deal because it's going to allow Lane Kiffin to be in Trinidad Chambliss's ear more often. It's going to allow him to do what he does pretty much every time that they play, where he's basically joysticking the quarterback. He's going to play 20 yards off. Lane Kiffin's going to play 20 yards in front of the ball. He's going to look at what you're running defensively. He's going to figure out the structure, and then he'll tell his quarterback what he thinks is going to be open. And he makes your life so easy because of how smart he is, because of how well and how knowledgeable he is in terms of understanding defenses and their structures and the rules. So I think that's going to be a super fun chess match, just seeing Lane Kiffin against Brent Venables, because Venables is a guy who will disguise. He will show you different things. He will try to confuse the quarterback, and he will send a lot of pressures. So it makes you wonder, can Kiffin actually joystick Trinidad Chambliss this weekend, or will it be where Trinidad Chambliss is going to have to figure out where to go with the ball, and it's going to be out of Lane Kiffin's hands? If it is, I think that's advantage Oklahoma. If it's not, it's a massive advantage for Ole Miss. And on the other side, can Oklahoma run the ball? Because if Oklahoma can run the ball, I think you're going to see some points scored by them. I think you're going to see a win, and I think it would be something by something like 10 to 14 points. But if they can't run the ball, I think you're going to see Ole Miss defense be able to do similar things to what Texas did, where they're going to be able to stifle this Oklahoma offense, and they're going to be able to hold them down, because when they are able to stop the run and they are able to play all of the different things within their coverage toolbox, where they can play split safety, two high, Tampa 2, cover 2, quarters, whatever you want, they're a lot better. But when they can't stop the run and they're forced to put 8 people in the box and be super devoted to stopping the run, there's a lot of problems for them on the back end because they can't run what they want to run. They have to play man coverage. They have to leave their corners on islands. They have to play cover 3, and it's a lot easier to have success against cover 3 when you know you're going to see it 90% of the time the way you do when you can't stop the run if you're Ole Miss. So to me, those are the two keys. Can Oklahoma run the ball, and then can Brent Venables take the game out of Lane Kiffin's hands?
Yeah. What was your prediction for the game?
I'm going to say Oklahoma's going to win 21, Ole Miss 20.
Yeah. So at first, this was a hard game for me to really look at, but once I really started to look into everything that's been going on this year and how both teams have performed, it started to get a little bit easier. I think. I think just going to your point about the chess match between Brent Venables and Lane Kiffin, Lane Kiffin being arguably, you could say, the best offensive mind in the country versus Venables, who throughout his whole career has been an amazing defensive coordinator and just an amazing defensive mind overall, who will bring a lot of confusion, will cause a lot of havoc to any offense. Um, when you look at the preview, Oklahoma is number one in total yards given up on defense, whereas Ole Miss, I think, is in the top 10 with yards getting on offense. So it's going to be a very good game. I think that matchup is going to decide the game. In all honesty, I do have Oklahoma though, just because I think Oklahoma overall, I think they've improved. I think what we saw last week from the South Carolina game was kind of the antithesis of how that South Carolina Oklahoma matchup worked out last year. How just from the jump, South Carolina was just beating on Oklahoma, and we saw the complete opposite this last Saturday. So I have Oklahoma winning this game just because we saw Oklahoma last week, which granted South Carolina is not a great defense, but neither is Ole Miss when it comes to running the ball. We saw Oklahoma's running back tally 100 yards plus, which is his first time this year in a SEC matchup. I think he did it against Temple, but other than that, has not been able to get anything moving on the ground at all. So just from what we saw with Ole Miss's inability to stop anything defensively against Georgia, and from Oklahoma, who this year, even though they gave up 20 plus to Texas, I mean, a lot of that was just off of special teams and just very good field position. So I think if Oklahoma can limit the turnovers, I think if they can get the ball moving on the ground, I think it's going to be a tough day for Ole Miss. And I think Lane Kiffin's going to continue his road struggles. I have Oklahoma winning the game. I'm going to go with about a score of 24-17.
Nice. So now we can head on to our third game before we talk about two of the other conferences. This is the third ranked SEC matchup. This is where College Game Day is going. We're talking about Missouri and Vandy. Not something I think you would have thought you were going to say heading into the season. I know you and I were a considerable bit lower on Vandy than what they are now. I think by now both of us had them being something like 4-3 or 5-2. Certainly not 6-1, and certainly not beating LSU in the way that they did, where the offense pretty much controlled the game. The defense got pressure when they needed to, got stops when they needed to. A really impressive performance last week by Vandy. And then Missouri, another team that had a pretty impressive performance last week against a pretty spirited Auburn team playing at night in Jordan Hare. I think everyone knows kind of the ghost of that stadium and the weird stuff that can go down at night in that stadium. So for Missouri to go on the road and then get into overtime and pull it out is super impressive for them. I think to me, this game is super fun just because of the run games that both of these teams will run. Vandy is going to be super, super creative. If you watched their game last week, you heard their broadcast talking about how they have a strong side and a quick side, where their strong side of the offensive line are their better run blockers, and they'll always flip them. They'll always put them, and that's how they'll declare their run strength. And then their quick side is their guard and their tackle that are better against pass pro. I think it's super interesting the way that they do that. It creates a lot of confusion for defensive lines. It causes you to communicate a lot, which can create some busts. It can create some missed assignments, some busted assignments. It's something that I think you're going to have to watch for this weekend to see if Missouri ends up giving up a couple explosives just because they're not in the right spot, or they end up busting their assignment because of all of the different things that Vandy does in terms of their offensive line and the motions. And then you can't forget that they still sprinkle in some triple option. They're a quarterback run team. They'll sprinkle in some outside zone, some inside zone, some duo, some counter. They're super creative in terms of their run game. And then on the other side for Missouri, this is an outside zone team. They, unlike Texas, do a tremendous job of blocking it. They really understand angles. They understand leverage. They understand how to get to the right spots and where to get their hands and what angles they're trying to create. And it helps when you've got maybe the best running back in the SEC and Ahmad Hardy. So two really good running teams, two really good run games, two offenses that have really explosive runners, whether that's Diego Pavia or whether that's Ahmad Hardy. So I think this is a game that whatever team can stop the run, or whatever team can do a better job of mitigating the running success of the other team, that's the team that's going to win. Because I think, and this is especially true for Vanderbilt, if Vanderbilt can force Bo Pribula to have to throw the ball a lot and to have to win the game, I think you feel super comfortable if you're Vanderbilt. Whereas if you're Missouri, I think Vanderbilt's comfortable letting Diego Pavia go win them the game with his arm. I think he's taken a real step forward in that regard. So I think, despite the fact that I think Missouri is actually going to do a better job in terms of stopping the run, I'm going to take Vanderbilt because I trust their quarterback more, and the fact that it is at home, which doesn't actually mean a whole lot for Vanderbilt because of they don't have the best crowd, but just because it is at home, because I do think that does play a factor in terms of how players get up for games and the travel and whatnot. I will take Vanderbilt to win.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those points there. I think definitely for Missouri, it will help having a really good run defense as they do. I think it's like the third in the nation, if I'm correct. And overall, they're just very good defensively. But to your point, Pavia has definitely taken a huge step up with this passing game. I saw it all game versus LSU that he just looked very comfortable throwing. He looked very comfortable in any situation, whether he was thrown out of the pocket, whether he was able to stay in the pocket. He was very accurate with the ball. And overall, offensively, they're just very good. They were definitely a very physical team, not just on offense, but also on defense. I mean, we've seen them push around the lines, both sides last game. So this isn't the Vandy team that you or I predicted. I predicted them, I think, to go like 5-7. I didn't think they were going to make a bowl game. But shoot, Pavia he's silenced a lot of the haters. And this is definitely going to be a good game. Pribula, we've seen him struggle the past 2 games against Auburn last week. They were very close to losing a couple times, which I think we've seen with Auburn all year. Auburn's just been very close in all these games of winning, and just possibly they could be, if they could very well be 7-0 right now if they just had a competent offense. I mean, their defense has been playing very good. They only lost by 10 versus Georgia. They lost by 1 score versus A&M, Missouri, and forgot who the other opponent was. But they've been within all these games for almost the whole game. So, but still a good win for Missouri. I do worry about them offensively, though, against a Vanderbilt defense who may not be the greatest, but especially with the rushing defense, though, Missouri having Ahmad Hardy being their biggest weapon, obviously, on offense. Vanderbilt being 12th, only allowing 92 yards a game rushing. They're definitely going to have Pribula to have a good day. They're going to definitely need him to play very good offensively to have a chance to win this game. But I think Vanderbilt's going to win. I think that I have them winning like 31-20. I just think that Vanderbilt has shown that they're the better team. Kind of like I said about Texas A&M and Oklahoma. I just think that Vanderbilt's going to come out. They're going to play a lot better, and I think Vanderbilt will still be a top 10 team next week when they go to Austin.
Yeah, I agree with that. Which is a great way to segue into our last 2 games, which do not feature top 10 teams, but they do mention teams that are going to be potentially in conference championships, may determine playoff bids, and that is UCF, Memphis, and then BYU, Iowa State. We'll begin with BYU and Iowa State. BYU is currently ranked inside the top 15. Iowa State has, I believe, 1 or 2 losses on the season, having just lost to Cincinnati and Colorado. BYU is undefeated on the season after a win against Utah this weekend. BYU's been playing some really good football this year. They've got a freshman quarterback. I believe his name is Bach Beiermeyer. He's played some really good ball for them. They always seem to be super disciplined. They don't make mistakes. They force you to beat them. And then for Iowa State, 2 really, really disappointing losses, 2 losses that you don't feel are very impressive, especially after a really ugly performance week 1 against a pretty terrible Kansas State team. Rocco Becht has had his ups and downs. I think that in general, this has been an Iowa State team that you had a lot of high hopes for in the preseason, and maybe it hasn't delivered in the way that you thought it would. But this is one of those games where you win it and the perception of you completely changes. It skyrockets you back into the Big 12 championship consideration. It gets you potentially in the spots for playoffs. So I think this is a super big game for that reason. I trust BYU. I just think they're the better team in this game. I'll take them 31-22. I'll say 31-21 because I don't think they're going to score 22. But I'll take BYU to win.
Yeah, man, you hit a lot of the points that I was going to make. Bear Bachmeier throughout this whole year has looked very good. True freshman coming in and really able to fill the spots over for Jake Retzlaff, who kind of all of a sudden had to leave last year, which put BYU in a tough spot, which I thought was going to really affect them negatively. But we've seen that they haven't really missed a beat on offense. 7-0 right now. Some pretty good wins. Iowa State, as you mentioned, had some 2 pretty disappointing losses. I forgot what one of them was, but I know they lost to Colorado. They have been dealing with injuries, though. I'm pretty sure 2 of their corners have been hurt. They've had a couple other injuries on both sides of the ball, so it's been kind of unlucky for them. But as you pointed to earlier, this will be a very big game in determining who possibly goes to the Big 12 championship, with Iowa State still very much in the mix, only being 2-2 in conference and BYU being 4-0. I think I will have I don't know. This game is hard for me to predict because I think that BYU is the better team. But similarly to Jordan Hare, we see a lot of weird stuff go on in Jack Trice Stadium over the years. They're one of those stadiums of the Big 12 that, especially when you have a good Iowa State team, a lot can happen. I think for this game, though, I think I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna go on a limb. I'm gonna go with the upside. I think Iowa State's gonna win. I think that the Jack Trice Magic's gonna come out, and I think that Iowa State will get the win. I'm gonna go with the score about 31-28. I think that Rocco Beck will have a very good game, and I just think that overall they'll play a very good game and put themselves right back into Big 12 title contention.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction, and that leads us to our last game that we're going to talk about today before we head out, and that's UCF versus Memphis.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say we still need to do Texas Mississippi State at some point.
you're right. We'll do that. We'll do that right after. So we're talking UCF Memphis. I'm going to keep this pretty brief. I think Memphis, to me, kind of everything that I had in terms of positive feelings towards them kind of evaporated this last week after they got beat by, I can't even remember the team, but
UAB, it was UAB.
yeah, and I think that was a UAB team that had just fired Trent Dilfer. So not really something that not really the type of performance that inspires much confidence, especially against a really good UCF team or USF team. Um, they've got a really good coach, Alex Golish, and if you don't know, their special teams are awesome. They do so many different things with their special teams. They are really well coached, and they maximize possessions. They create possessions for their offense. That they're just one of those teams who play super sound football. I think to me this is a game where UCF rolls. I think they are going to be the group of five bid, and I think if you don't give them serious attention as a playoff team, I think they could beat you.
Yeah, I didn't have to give this game too much thought. I think USF is going to win. I just think that they're far and away the best Group of Five team. I mean, we saw them going to Denton last week or the week before, which looked like it could possibly be like a game that decides the G5 spot. And they just absolutely and in a sellout crowd, the record crowd for DFAQ Stadium, I think is what it's called. They just absolutely demolished North Texas. I mean, after that first half, they just steamrolled them, and it was a beatdown from the start. Alex Golish, a very good coach. Want to give a shout out to former Texas defensive coordinator Todd Orlando. Done a really good job there, and I just think overall they're going to have a really amazing game. Memphis, we see they've just struggled defensively all year. They've been able to match teams offensively, but last week losing to a team that has no head coach really and no real true identity. It just didn't make me feel good about them at all. I have USF winning. I think they're going to win big. I think have like a 20-point win for them, honestly.
Yeah, just to respond to this by Aggie Boy, I'm not used to USF being the really good group of five or really good mid-major school down in Florida. Every time I think of a really good smaller schools in Florida, I think of the Scott Frost years with UCF, and so it's like instinctual for me now. But good on Alex Golish, former Tennessee offensive coordinator, doing a really good job at UCF. Going to get some real interest from some Power Four jobs, I would imagine. Probably not going to be Florida, but I think you could see his name get mentioned in maybe a Big Ten job that opens up in a couple weeks, and you may see a team like Arkansas or maybe even Auburn, maybe Kentucky, throw their hat in the ring for his services. But that's gonna be it for our picks. We're just gonna really quickly talk about Texas, Mississippi State, give you guys some previews, some things to look at, some of the different matchups that you need to know, and give you a final score prediction on that. For me, it's pretty simple. The offense has to be able to stay on the field more. If you give if you give this air raid system enough plays and enough possessions, eventually they're going to score. There's just they live to maximize the amount of plays that they run. That's the entire thing with no huddle. Eventually, if you give a team 80 snaps of no huddle football, that defense is going to be exhausted. That's just a lot of time to be on the field. It's a lot of time without any ability to substitute either. So to me, Texas is going to have to get off the field one early. They can't stay on the field for too long for the defense. They can't get into third and threes and then give up first downs. They've got to get off the field really quick. Then the offense has to figure out ways to sustain possessions. You can't be on the field. You can't be on the field for three plays and then give it back to that offense you're going to put yourself in a world of hurt. You're going to put yourself in an upset alert. So that to me is where this game starts for Texas. You have to figure out ways to stay on the field offensively, and that means you need to figure out a way to get Arch Manning in a rhythm early, and you need to figure out a way to run the ball, whether that's through inside zone or outside zone or QB run, whatever it is. You got to be able to get into third and manageable. So that way you're not letting pass rushers tee off on Manning, which I think has created real problems for him this year, where the offensive line has not been good. He has not had time to really see the field and feel comfortable in the pocket, which I do think has created some accuracy issues, some mechanical issues where if you're not comfortable in the pocket, if you're not able to go through your reads in the manner that you would like to, you can see some of this stuff start to break down. So Texas is going to have to protect Arch Manning, and it starts with being able to run the ball. If they're not able to do that, they're going to be in a ton of trouble. I think they're going to do enough offensively. I do think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think in general, we've seen Pete Kwiatkowski have a ton of success against these air raid teams. You can go back 2 weeks to Oklahoma and see what happened there. Um, you do need to be careful because Mississippi State will run out. I think his name is Kamario Taylor. He's a freshman quarterback. They'll run some QB run with him. They'll put him in the game, and that's something you got to be cognizant of. It's a package that you need to see and you need to be aware of if you're Texas. But to me, I don't necessarily think that Mississippi State's going to threaten this Texas team a lot. They've got two good receivers in Anthony Evans and Brennan Thompson. Obviously, the loss of Michael Taft is pretty significant, but you've got Derek Williams there. You've got Xavier Filsaime. You've got Jordan Rebella back there. I don't necessarily think this is. I don't. It's a loss, but I don't think it's a season crushing loss. I think that Texas is going to bounce back after last week, and I'll take them to win 27-17.
Is Taff out for this game?
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know if they were just gonna put a club on his hand or something, but okay. So I don't think it really changes much my prediction either way. I think this is gonna be a pretty ugly game, to be honest, from both teams. For one, but Mississippi State I think is like in the bottom 5 in penalized teams. Like they're more penalized than we are, which we're a very penalized team. Um, Both teams decent in the turnover margin. I think our third down conversion is going to be a big key in this game as we rank 90th and Mississippi State's 40th on third down defense. So I think that could be a big matchup. But I think overall, I'm not too worried about us defensively. You speak on that Kamario Taylor package. We saw something similar to that with Colin Klein at Kansas State when they had Will Howard and Avery Johnson when they tried to run that 1-2 duo against us, and we were able to hold that pretty good. We were able to stop it. I think that we will need to at least have some run game going. I don't think we could just beat them in the air as their pass defense is definitely their strength when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. But I have a very good confidence in our defense to be able to stop them. I think our offense will be better because, I mean, to be fair, it can't get much worse than last week, as last week was our worst offensive output since the Notre Dame game in 2015 under Charlie Strong. So I think we'll bounce back. I think we'll have a pretty good game. I'm going to have a 34-21 win for us. I think that it's going to be – I think we're going to bounce back similar to how we bounced back after the Florida game. And I expect a really good performance. I think Arch will improve on the road, and I think we'll get a big win. Before we head out, I wanted to get into Aggie Boy's comment, crazy the BK coaching tree is all better coaches than BK. David predicts Texas 28-14. Wouldn't be shocked by that at all. And then Tet, if we score 34, I'm gonna be so happy. Yeah, I'd be pretty pleased with that. It definitely make me a lot more confident going into the tough stretch for the rest of the season. Looks like we lost Pack, but yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be back on next week at 7 p.m. We will be recapping the Texas versus Mississippi State game. Hopefully we win that game. We will be previewing Texas versus Vanderbilt and what should be, if Vanderbilt wins, a top 10 matchup in Austin at 11 a.m. Central Time. And other than that, sorry, we got Pack back.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. This is now the second time that my internet has lagged out. Should not be something that happens week to week, but sometimes we have those days, and unfortunately, this is one of those days for me. Hopefully, Saturday will not be one of those days for Texas. Clint and I certainly don't think it will. It doesn't look like many people in the chat do. Just going to really quickly touch on Ted's comment about Jonah Williams. I don't think you're going to see him play much on Saturday. From what I understand and from what I last remember, he's something like safety 5 in terms of the depth chart. He's not. He's not. He if he gets in the rotation, it'll be pretty sparingly. You're not going to see him play a ton of snaps, which again is probably a good thing, right? He's got to learn the playbook. He's got to get in football shape. He's got to learn how to play safety at Texas, which is a really tough ask. And if you go back and look at the safeties over the past 2 years, you can kind of see that the standard is really high. Michael Taft's going to be a day 2 draft pick. We obviously know Andrew Makuba was a round 2 draft pick. And then you look at Derek Williams last year, who was starting over Andrew Makuba last year. This is a loaded safety room. It's really talented. So I don't know that you're going to see Jonah Williams. I don't know that's a bad thing. I think you want to see him wait and you want to see him get some maturation and some growth and really build on those practice reps and go from there. But I think it's a loss losing Taft. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Texas is going to win. Clint obviously thinks so. In terms of what can go wrong for Texas, what will cause them to lose, we've kind of already touched on it, but just to give you guys all the recap of what might happen should Texas lose, it'll be because they can't run the ball and Arch Manning is again under duress. If those two things happen, you will struggle offensively. You will give them a lot of possessions and you will lose. You can't turn the ball over. And then you're going to have to see a better game plan from Steve Sarkisian. Obviously, I think it was yesterday he came out and said that he was hired because of his play calling, and I agree with him. He's one of the 3 best offensive minds in college football. You're not going to take that away from him. I think you do increase the odds of really of becoming worse offensively. Now, is some of that maybe him play calling taking away from the roster construction because the offensive line this year is not good enough. The running back room really could have been built upon in terms of depth. Those are 2 things that you can question about Steve Sarkisian and play calling. We know that it generally does not work for national title contenders. They don't typically win. These teams don't typically win titles with play calling head coaches, but that's a topic for the offseason for this week. You need Sarkisian to call a better game. You need Manning to play a better game. And you need the offensive line to play similarly to how they did against Oklahoma. And if those things happen, Texas will win, and Texas will win fairly comfortably.
Yeah, man. You hit everything right there. I don't really have anything else to add to that. Just hope we win.
Yeah, so if nobody in the chat has anything, which it doesn't look like, we're gonna end it here. Thank you guys for being here. Please like, subscribe, comment, retweet on the Twitter channel. On the Twitter page. Go follow Total Coverage on Twitter, on X. Follow Ghost on X. He has really good content. He's obviously the owner of Total Coverage Sports. And then please do check out all the other streams that we have here on the network. We have ACC streams, Big 12 streams, Big 10 streams. We've got the Group of 5. And then if for any of you guys who love basketball, they'll have an entire thing for that too. They'll have some stuff for baseball too. So it's the place to be year round. So subscribe, and we know if you give us a shot, you'll stick around. So thank you. And